The monsoon had arrived with a vengeance, lashing the winding ghat roads of Maharashtra into slick, treacherous ribbons. Rain hammered against the windshield of Rohan's aging Scorpio, blurring the already indistinct lines of the deserted highway. It was past midnight, and the only company he had was the rhythmic swish of his wipers, and the gnawing unease that had settled in his stomach since he'd crossed the ominous milestone marking the beginning of New Hampshire 6. 66, a stretch whispered about in hushed tones in every roadside dhaba and sleepy village for miles around. They called it the Haunted Highway. Rohan, a freelance wildlife photographer on a desperate assignment to capture the elusive Malabar trogon before the breeding season ended, had scoffed at the local folklore. Ghosts and ghouls? Fairy tales for children. He was a man of science, of logic, of the tangible world. Yet, as the storm raged and the darkness pressed in, a prickle of something undeniably ancient and unsettling began to crawl up his spine. He'd been warned. Old man Shankar at the last tea stall, his eyes clouded with a wisdom that seemed to predate electricity, had clutched Rohan's arm with surprising strength. "Don't travel that road after dusk, Beta son. The Sundari Pretini roams there. The beautiful witch. She lures men to their doom." Shankar had recounted tales of drivers vanishing without a trace, their vehicles found abandoned with keys still in the ignition, and of chilling laughter echoing through the fog. Rohan had offered a polite nod and a dismissive smile, attributing it all to superstition and the potent local brew. Now, alone in the storm's fury, he wasn't so sure. The first sign that something was amiss was subtle, a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. He glanced in the rearview mirror but saw only the relentless downpour and the inky blackness swallowing the road behind him. He chalked it up to fatigue. He'd been driving for hours, fueled by lukewarm coffee and dwindling hope of finding his elusive bird. Then it happened again, a fleeting glimpse of white near the dense foliage lining the road. This time, it was more distinct. A figure, tall and slender, standing motionless amidst the thrashing trees, bathed in the eerie glow of his headlights. He slowed down, his heart beginning to thump a nervous rhythm against his ribs. Who would be out here in this weather, at this hour? As he drew closer, the figure turned its head, and Rohan's breath hitched in his throat. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Her face, illuminated by the intermittent flashes of lightning, possessed an ethereal quality. Long, dark hair cascaded around her shoulders, and her eyes, wide and luminous, seemed to pierce through the storm and directly into his soul. She wore a flowing white saree that clung to her form, outlining a silhouette that was both alluring and unsettling. A strange pull emanated from her, an almost magnetic force that urged him to stop. His hand instinctively tightened on the steering wheel. This was her, wasn't it? The Sundari Pretini. But the stories hadn't prepared him for this. He had imagined a grotesque hag, not this vision of haunting beauty. She raised a delicate hand, her fingers long and pale, beckoning him. A voice, soft as the rustling of leaves, yet carrying an undeniable command, seemed to weave its way into his mind. "Please help me." Rohan, despite the icy grip of fear tightening around his chest, felt a surge of something akin to pity. She looked lost, vulnerable. He was a decent man. He couldn't just leave her stranded in the storm. He reluctantly pulled over to the side of the road, the tires splashing through puddles that mirrored the turbulent sky. He switched off the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the drumming of the rain and the frantic beat of his own heart. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the door handle. Was this a trap? Was this how the others had vanished? The warnings of old man Shankar echoed in his ears. Taking a deep breath, he cautiously opened the door. The wind howled, carrying the scent of wet earth and something else. Something subtly sweet, like decaying jasmine. The beautiful woman stood a few feet away, her eyes fixed on him. As he stepped out into the downpour, he noticed something peculiar. Her feet didn't seem to touch the ground. They hovered just above the muddy surface. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced through the haze of her beauty. This was no stranded traveler. This was something else. Something supernatural. He tried to step back, to slam the car door shut, but it was too late. Her hand, surprisingly strong, shot out and gripped his arm. Her touch was icy, sending a shiver that had nothing to do with the rain down his spine. "Please, I need a ride," her voice whispered, the sweetness now tinged with an undercurrent of something ancient and sorrowful. Rohan tried to pull away, but her grip was like iron. He could feel his strength draining away, replaced by a chilling lethargy. Her eyes seemed to deepen, swirling with an endless darkness that threatened to consume him. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. His limbs felt heavy, his mind sluggish. He was falling under her spell, becoming another victim of the beautiful witch of the haunted highway. She began to lead him towards the dense forest, her grip unwavering. He stumbled along, his will completely gone. The trees loomed like skeletal figures in the darkness, their branches clawing at the sky. The air grew colder, heavier, filled with an oppressive silence that swallowed the sound of the storm. He saw faint, ethereal lights flickering between the trees, like ghostly lanterns. He heard whispers, too faint to understand, yet filled with an unbearable sadness. This was her domain, the place where she lured her victims. Just as he felt his consciousness fading, a memory flashed through his mind. His grandmother, a devout woman, always kept a small silver locket blessed by a local saint. He hadn't believed in its power, but he carried it in his wallet out of respect. With a surge of desperate energy, he fumbled in his pocket, his fingers closing around the cool metal of the locket. He clutched it tightly in his hand, focusing all his remaining will on the image of the saint etched on its surface. As his fingers tightened around the silver, a searing heat coursed through his arm. The beautiful woman recoiled, her grip loosening. A hiss, like air escaping from a punctured tire, escaped her lips. Her luminous eyes flickered, their captivating beauty replaced by a look of pure, malevolent rage. The ethereal lights in the forest flickered violently, and the whispers intensified, becoming a chorus of anguished cries. The air around them crackled with an unseen energy. She stumbled back, her form flickering as if caught in a heat haze. The sweet scent of jasmine turned acrid, like burnt sugar. Rohan, his limbs trembling, stumbled back towards his car. He didn't dare to look back. He fumbled with the door handle, his fingers clumsy with fear. He scrambled inside, slammed the door shut, and fumbled for the ignition. The engine roared to life, a defiant sound against the storm's fury. He didn't wait, didn't think. He slammed his foot on the accelerator, the tires spinning in the mud before gripping the asphalt. He drove like a man possessed, his eyes glued to the road ahead. The image of the beautiful, terrifying face burned into his mind. He didn't stop until the first rays of dawn painted the sky a pale, hopeful gray, miles away from the haunted stretch of New Hampshire 666. He finally pulled over at a bustling roadside dhaba. The cacophony of morning sounds a welcome assault on his senses. He was alive. He had escaped, but the memory of the beautiful witch, her icy touch, and the chilling whispers of the haunted forest would forever be etched in his nightmares. Days later, back in the relative safety of his city apartment, Rohan couldn't shake off the experience. He tried to rationalize it, to find a logical explanation, but the truth remained stubbornly elusive. He had encountered something beyond the realm of reason. Driven by a need to understand, he started researching the local folklore. He pored over old texts, spoke to villagers, and listened to their hushed tales. He learned more about the Sundari Pretini, a spirit of a woman wronged, forever bound to the highway, seeking vengeance or perhaps just companionship in her eternal solitude. Some stories spoke of her beauty being a mask for a monstrous entity. Others painted her as a tragic figure, forever yearning for release. One old legend spoke of a way to break her hold, an act of selfless kindness, a genuine offering of peace to her tormented soul. But after his terrifying encounter, Rohan couldn't imagine ever going back to that haunted highway. Weeks turned into months. Rohan tried to move on, to focus on his photography. But the image of the beautiful witch haunted his every waking moment. He couldn't bring himself to travel at night anymore, and the sound of rain always sent a shiver down his spine. Then, one day, he stumbled upon an old news article online. It spoke of a young woman named Priya who had died in a tragic accident on New Hampshire 66 decades ago. She had been on her way to meet her fiancé, carrying a precious antique silver locket, a family heirloom. The article mentioned that the locket was never recovered. A chilling realization dawned on Rohan. The silver locket in his wallet, it wasn't his grandmother's. It was Priya's. He must have unknowingly picked it up somehow during his frantic escape. He looked at the locket, the image of the saint now imbued with a new significance. Could this be the key? Could this be the way to bring peace to the Sundari Pretini? A sense of responsibility washed over him, stronger than his fear. He had to go back. He had to return the locket. This time, he prepared himself. He didn't go at night. He went during the day, the sun shining brightly on the familiar yet now ominous landscape. He carried the locket, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. He reached the spot where he had encountered her. The trees looked less menacing in the daylight, but the air still held a faint chill. He stepped out of his car, his voice trembling as he called out, "Priya? Are you here?" Silence, only the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. He held out the locket. I think this belongs to you." A faint shimmer appeared in the air before him, like heat rising from the asphalt. The form of the beautiful woman began to materialize, her ethereal beauty softened by the daylight. Her eyes, though still luminous, held a profound sadness instead of the terrifying allure he remembered. She looked at the locket, her gaze filled with an unspeakable longing. Her hand reached out, no longer icy and forceful, but gentle and translucent. As her fingers brushed against the silver, a soft, white light emanated from the locket. The air around them grew warm, filled with the scent of blooming jasmine, no longer decaying, but fresh and sweet. The whispers he had heard in the forest returned, but this time, they weren't filled with anguish. They sounded like sighs of relief, of peace finally found. The beautiful woman looked at Rohan, and for the first time, he saw not a terrifying predator, but a soul filled with sorrow. A faint smile touched her lips, a smile of pure serenity. As the light from the locket intensified, her form began to fade, dissolving into the warm sunlight. The whispers grew softer until they were no more than a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. The silver locket in Rohan's hand felt warm, almost alive. He knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that Priya, the beautiful witch of the haunted highway, had finally found her peace. He placed the locket near a small, unassuming memorial he hadn't noticed before, a simple stone marking a tragic accident. He stood there for a long moment, the sun on his face, the scent of jasmine in the air, a sense of profound peace settling within him. He had gone to the haunted highway seeking a rare bird. He had found something far more profound, a tragic story, a terrifying encounter, and ultimately a miracle of release. He drove away from New Hampshire 666 that day, not with fear, but with a sense of quiet understanding. The highway might still be whispered about, but for Rohan, the haunting was over. He had witnessed the beauty beneath the terror, and in doing so, had helped a lost soul find its way home.